Welcome back to the Unbreakable podcast, a journey of healing and hope. I'm your host, Christy. I'm here with my feathered, smart-mouthed co-host, Bailey. You will hear him in the background giving commentary whenever he feels like it. So in last week's episode, I talked about and walked you through the day of my accident, my memories, some of the things that I was thinking, and I ran through the long list of the injuries that I had. And so for this episode, I'm going to start talking about my early days in the ICU. So to start, I think the best way to do this and be able to say the things that I want to say is to start, I'm going to give you some of just the medical facts of what was going on, and then I will transition into some of my memories, the things that I felt and things like that. And I've really been enjoying reading the comments you guys left on my first video last week. I love that there's people out there that can relate to me, and some of the things that I'm saying make them feel not so alone. I love that sense of community, and I think it's important that we be honest about these things. I think, at least for me, talking about it and knowing that my feelings, my experiences are valid, and I'm not the only one, has been super paramount to my healing process. I can say that I'm in a much, much better place now, almost 2 years later, which is natural to get better and better. But compared to then, my mental state is in a much better place now that I have found some peace and found some community and been able to talk more about my feelings on the things that I experienced. So after I was intubated in the emergency room, they installed the halo in the, I don't know if they installed it in the emergency room or in the OR, I don't know. But anyways, after they stabilized me, they sent me up to neuro ICU, where my family briefly got to see me before they got kicked out. But I think it was the next day is when my neurosurgeon did the big operation on my neck. So in this picture, you can see the extent of separation of my injury. And in this picture right here, this is the repair. This is what my neck looks like today. I walk around with 2 titanium rods back there. I will get into how that feels later. But I've talked quite a bit with my neurosurgeon about all of these details. We see each other regularly because I have a lot of follow-up appointments with him. And he has told me just how nervous he was and did not have the best of hopes for my outcome after this surgery. And he prepared, and my husband corroborated that he prepared my family that, number one, she may not survive the surgery. She's, it's miraculous she even made it to the hospital. So he assured them that he would do the best he could. And obviously you can't live with a halo the rest of your life, and you can't walk around with your head flopping around. So they had to fuse me with the hardware. And I was told that during surgery, he kept trying to reduce that separation. And during the surgery, all of my vital signs would plummet and bottom out. And so he could not get it to a point that he wanted to get it to, but he fused me where he could. And my dura, for the non-medical people, the dura is a thick membrane that surrounds the brain and spinal cord, and it serves as protection, and it also keeps the fluid from leaking out. But so my dura was basically obliterated around my spinal cord in that area. So I, to this day, don't know how he did this. I keep meaning to ask him, and I always forget, but he had to rebuild my dura, repair it, rebuild it. Like it wasn't like you could just stitch it together. It was obliterated. So I have no idea how he fixed that. If anybody in neurosurgery sees this and has information on that, please leave me a comment, because I would love to read up on that. That is very interesting to me. I did not know that you could do such a thing. But he rebuilt / repaired my dura, fused me the best he could, and told my family, I made it through surgery. He did not know at that time what my prognosis would be, but it was a wait and see game. So other than the neck surgery, I also had a surgery to put an X-fix on my leg fracture, my tibial plateau fracture. And then I think it was only on for like 48 hours, and they took it off. And then they went in and operated on my leg. This is what my leg looked like before the surgery, and this is what it looks like after the surgery. They also had a plastic surgeon stitch up this scar on my chin. I actually do not have a picture, or I've never seen a picture of what that wound looked like before it was stitched, but I was told it was pretty gnarly. It was really rough. So Lee and my dad and everybody that actually saw that before it was repaired all talk about how great of a job he did on that. So thank you. I'd also aspirated blood and vomit, so my body just needed time to fight that. So for the first 10 days, I think it was, I was on a ventilator. I don't think I wasn't in an induced coma, but I was heavily medicated with propofol and fentanyl. Lord knows what else. Lee could probably tell you, but I'm sure I was on, I would assume, antibiotics, just because I'm sure they were anticipating me getting pneumonia from the things in my lungs. But I was sent for bronchoscopies, lots more testing, and just tending to all of my other wounds. Like this arm right here was really bad. It ended up having to have a wound vac, but I actually significantly damaged my brachial plexus, which is the major nerve branch in this arm. So my arm was initially paralyzed. I can't remember if they knew it was temporary or if they didn't know, but I do remember my family being very concerned, because I'm an avid crocheter. That's like my therapy. It's how I got through my divorce. It's what I do to keep myself sane. I do not sit still ever. If I am sitting down, I'm crocheting something. It's my thing, and I'm really good at it, and I sell stuff, and I'm just kind of known for that, at least in my area. But they were very concerned about if I would ever be able to crochet again, which was really sweet. So unless I'm forgetting something, that the first 10 days that I was in neuro ICU on a ventilator was mostly letting my body rest, assessing and managing the extent of my injuries, watching, because I had a lot of things in my abdomen that were bleeding. I never had to have surgery for that, but they kept a close eye on that in case they had to go in. I ended up having a problem with my liver later, but I can get into that later. So as far as after I was stabilized and after the first surgery, things kind of calmed down for the first 10 days or so. And to talk about my perspective of that part is not, that medically interesting. The medically interesting stuff is coming. We will probably get there in the next episode. But being a patient in ICU is really hard to describe in a way that sounds like I am a sane person, and in a way that sounds educated. I'm not sure if that's the word I'm looking for, but my earliest memory, I have two very early memories. I don't know which one came first, but one of my earliest memories was somebody waking me up, and it was a woman on my right side, and she introduced herself and she said, "I'm Lori, Natalie's mom." Lori is a respiratory therapist at UAB and is the mother of a good friend of mine and also the girl that's been doing my hair for many, many years, Natalie. And I remember she pulled her phone out and FaceTimed Natalie. And I remember seeing Natalie. She was in the car on FaceTime, and I couldn't talk because I was intubated. I was on the ventilator, but I just remember sobbing hysterically. And I remember Natalie sobbing. And I remember feeling like I wanted to reach through the phone and grab her and like hold on to it. Almost like she could pull me out of that bed through the phone is kind of what I felt like. But it felt very human. Like, my family was there the whole time, so I'm not sure. Some of these things don't even make sense to me. Like, Lee was there almost, so my family almost became like pieces of furniture. I know that sounds very cold, but they were a constant. So they were normal things. So a lot of those things didn't stand out, but like this conversation with Natalie, it was just very emotional and raw, and I don't know what else I would say to describe it other than just really emotional. And I remember her sobbing. I remember seeing her crying, and it was like we were just hugging each other through the phone. And I think I remember her saying something like, "Oh, Christy," and whatever. But that was really sweet of Lori to do that. And it felt nice to know that there was someone taking care of me that knew me. It made it feel a little more personal, which I really needed, because when you are a patient in the ICU and you are neurologically intact, meaning when you're conscious, you are able to process your thoughts. Like, you're aware. When I was conscious, I was aware of what was going on, but no matter what I felt, I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't tell anybody that I had an itch, or I couldn't tell anybody where I was hurting, and I would just lay there unable to move. I couldn't move anything. I was in that halo. My arm was paralyzed. My leg was broken and propped up. And so I couldn't move, couldn't communicate, totally helpless. And people that you don't know are constantly coming in, and they do things to you. And I used this analogy many times, but I remember, and I told many people this, it felt like I was a sack of meat that people would just do things to. And essentially that's what you are in the ICU. But it's different when you're the sack of meat. And I totally get that in order to do that job, you have to see a lot. Unfortunately, human beings do become sacks of meat to you. Not all of them, but they run together after so many, and nobody could do that job if they got so emotionally involved with every single person that came through there. So I get it. I'm not saying that anybody did anything wrong in that regard, but I do remember feeling very like an object. So when Lori was there and she was my RT, and she knew me, and I got to talk to Natalie, it made me feel like a person again, a person that was worthy of love and kindness, and it was just really emotional. The other really early memory I have, one is kind of funny, one is sad, but I remember waking up and still intubated, so I couldn't talk, and I'm left-handed, but my left arm was paralyzed. So I would write with my right hand, but I couldn't see what I was writing because I couldn't move. So I'm trying to write without being able to see what I'm writing. And I remember my stepmom. I remember seeing my stepmom sitting beside the bed. I remember her crying. And it makes total sense why she was crying. But she's sitting next to me when I looked like this. And I remember thinking, well, what in the world is she crying about? Like, I just could not figure out why she was sitting there crying. I was like, what in the world is wrong with her? That to me is funny now, but that's what my brain was thinking at the time. And I have a picture somewhere. I will try to find it. But she kept some of the papers that I would write on. And there was one piece of paper that got me a little bit emotional when I saw it. But I wrote something about my dad. I was trying to ask about my dad. And I wrote on that piece of paper, not his fault. Because I wanted him to know that I've never blamed my dad for that. But as a parent, I'm sure it's natural to have guilt, even if it's a natural reaction as a parent to have guilt for anything happening to your child, whether you had anything to do with it or not. But I'm sure my dad still carries some form of guilt for that. I hope he can move past that. I hope he has moved past that, because I don't want that for him. I'm just very grateful to still be here. Keep hitting my microphone. I hope it's not making a bunch of noise. But she kept that paper, and I saw it like a year later. She brought it out to me, and as soon as I saw it, I kind of remembered doing it, and it got me a little bit emotional. And then I wrote on there somewhere something about how bad I'm hurting and nobody understands or nobody cares or something like that. I also remember this must have all happened in the same day, because a lot of these earliest memories are my stepmom was there, so it had to have all been the same day, and just for whatever reason I remember that day more than others. But I remember, I don't know if I wrote it or if I was like pointing. I think I pointed at her, and I remember somehow trying to tell her to take a picture. I wanted her to take a picture of me so that I could see it down the road, so that I would never get on a motorcycle again. That was my thought process. I want you to take my pictures, and I want you to show me these pictures when I get out of here to remind me that this is what happened, and I will not get back on a motorcycle again. Which I don't need the pictures to not get back on a motorcycle, but I do remember, like, you take my picture. Thanks. The other issue I had, which is common with head injuries, is my vision was really messed up. I had double vision. So I couldn't read anything. I couldn't see anything. Everything was blurry. It was like the perfect combination of not being able to move, not being able to communicate, being in significant pain, being completely helpless and at the mercy of everybody and everything around you. Not to mention the diaper changes. I was incontinent for quite a few weeks and had to use the bathroom in a diaper and be rolled and changed and cleaned up, and it was a horrible, horrible, horrible experience. I can remember the way it felt when it would start coming out. I remember them rolling me, and I remember Lee, he would have to help sometimes, even though I didn't want him to, but they were short staffed, so he would just hold me on my side while they cleaned me up and changed me. But I can remember him holding me and them cleaning me and just sobbing hysterically because I was so embarrassed. And that's not a feeling anybody at 37 years old, really at any age, And that made me have so much compassion for my mother-in-law before she passed away. If you have been here since the beginning, then you know that my mother-in-law lived with us, and she passed away a couple of months ago. And the last couple of months, I was her caregiver, and she was bedbound and on hospice, and I would have to change her diapers. And she would say, "Oh, Christy, you have no idea how embarrassing this is." And I would say, "Marie, I'm so sorry, but I do. I know that this is horrible. I know exactly how you feel." And that really helped me be so much more compassionate with her when I had to change her diapers. I could just there aren't words that I could say to her, but I just empathized with that so much because it was so prominent in my mind from my time in the hospital. And I like to think at least that she could feel that. She could feel the love and the compassion and the empathy that I had for her there at the end when I would have to change her diaper. And I took pride in a weird way. I took pride in changing her diaper because it was my mission when I did that to make sure that she felt the way that my nurses and my care techs and my family made me feel when I was humiliated. But yeah, some of those experiences definitely transitioned over into me being a caregiver for her at the end, and I am grateful for that. I think I always wondered if that was something that I would be able to do for somebody else. I knew that at some point we would have to take care of our parents, and I always wondered how I would do if I had to change diapers. And I am glad to say that I was not only able to do it, but able to do it with empathy and compassion. And it gives me comfort knowing that I think I made her feel safe and loved and provided her with as much dignity as possible in a helpless situation. I feel like I was very fortunate with my nurses in neuro ICU. I still talk to several of them almost 2 years later, and y'all have heard me talk about Stacy so many times. But these people, what I don't think they understand and what I want them to know, which I think Stacy does at this point because I have talked about it before, but they have so many patients that don't have good outcomes. Most of the patients in neuro ICU just they don't make it, or if they do, they're very neurologically deficient. So they don't often see the happiest of endings with their patients. And so I really want to make that part of my mission and part of my story is really giving them the recognition and the credit they deserve. They were everything to me. They were respectful of me being a 37-year-old woman who didn't want to be on display, who deserved privacy and dignity and respect, and also as a patient who just deserved to be an asshole if I needed to. That Stacy especially was the absolute best at that. I think our personalities are very similar, and I think between her and Lee and just the condition that I was in, if I needed to lash out, they let me lash out, and it was okay. And I recognize that sometimes that may take a little more patience to let a patient have a temper tantrum for a minute, but I do remember I would get so frustrated about something and there was nothing I could do about it, and I couldn't tell anybody, and I didn't know what else to do, and the only thing I had any control over was my feet. And so I would just kick my feet as hard as I could, like a toddler, like a literal toddler. I would have a temper tantrum because I had no other outlet to express my frustration. And they would let me have my tantrum. They were my heroes, my friends, my nurses, my therapist, a good ICU nurse is paramount, in my opinion, in the recovery of their patients. If it is a patient that is a long-term patient, that relationship cannot be understated, in my opinion, on the outcome of that patient's mental state, mental healing. Throughout, even now, if I had a question about something or I wanted to talk to Stacy about something, I could call her. I could pick up the phone right now, and if she was not at work, she would answer, and I could ask her anything, and she would tell me. That has been one of the biggest reasons that I attribute to my mental well-being. Not only Stacy, but I can talk to Dr. Godzik, my neurosurgeon. I have been able to talk to another doctor, which I will get into in a future episode, but I have been able to talk to another doctor that was there when my brain herniated, and the doctor that did this. And that was an extremely traumatic experience that we will get into on next week's episode. But I got to talk to her like a year and a half later, and I had all these questions, and we ended up hugging and crying, and it was amazing. I left with so much peace, and so I had some questions answered. I just had more understanding. And for me, I'm not saying that this is for every patient, but for me, having the puzzle pieces put together, having my questions answered and things explained to me has helped me lay it down and move on. It's helped me make sense of all of the emotions and all of the mental issues that I had at the time. It has really helped me be able to lay that down and focus on what's ahead and focus on helping other people find that. So if you are a healthcare provider and you watch these videos, that's something that I hope that you can take to your patients, especially patients that you are with for a long period of time. But that nurse patient, doctor patient, PA patient, whatever, that relationship for me, was paramount and instrumental in my mental well-being throughout my recovery. And on the next episode, I will get into that a little more, as well as the brain herniation event and how that unfolded and the trauma that I went through with that. That is by far the most difficult part of my story. So I think that's a good place to end on this episode. Bailey certainly was well behaved today, wasn't he? So at the time of this filming, last week's episode, the first episode, is sitting around 2,500 views, which I was hoping to get like 1,000 in the first couple of days. So it's doing better than I hoped for, which is exciting. And again, if you would like to support this channel, please check the description. There's several ways that you can do that. I would love to have you as a member of the channel as soon as I get fiber optic internet. Now they're telling me it will be next month. I'm going to be doing a lot more lives. We will do subscriber only lives, member only lives, and maybe like reaction videos or commentary videos, because there's other things I like to talk about besides what happened to me. But I am going to try to commit to an episode a week. So I hope to film ahead of time and have everything ready to go. We are going on a camping trip September 5th, I think, for my birthday. My birthday is September 6th. We're going on a camping trip, and I'm hoping if the channel does well, I get some more members or super thanks or whatever, I'm going to buy another GoPro so that I will have 2 GoPros to do our camping vlogs, because as of right now I have to go get my dad's GoPro and I use one GoPro for certain shots and the other GoPro for time lapses and stuff like that. But that's the next goal for this channel. I want to purchase another GoPro, and I also want to purchase a subscription to a live streaming service. I think it's like $20 a month, but I would have to do quite a few lives, maybe a few more members, things like that, because I don't just want to spend all of Lee's money, because y'all know this is the only income that I have, so I don't want to spend all of my husband's money on YouTube stuff. So if you guys want those things, please, if you are able, only if you are able and you feel led to do that, I would certainly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening and helping me through this journey, just because by me putting out these videos and you watching them and commenting on them or emailing me or whatever, that is helping me. It is hopefully helping some other people. I've gotten quite a few messages that it has, but it's also helping me more than you guys could even know. So thank you guys so much for that. I hope y'all have a great rest of the week, and Bailey and I will see you very soon.